Shawn French, what up? This one luck, I let the pain inspire me. I put my all in everything I'm doing. Up until it's done, I'm me for the entirety. I put in overtime, I be working. Just know I'ma go for mine, cause I earned it. They watching, I know it's time. I confirmed it. A whole society determined.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back. I am your host, Shawn French, and I have with me today a cancer survivor, a freedom forager, a faith-driven leader. She's an ultimate entrepreneur, and she is so incredible. I cannot wait to share with you guys my guest today, Jody Yonker. She is currently going through her own cancer journey, thyroid cancer, and the tumors are shrinking, and she is feeling great and looking unbelievable. So without further ado, I want to welcome Jody to the show. How are you, my friend?
Well, thank you so much, Shawn. I have admired you from afar for years. I just love your journey and your TED Talk and just all of the things that you show up every day and do for the world. So I am super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I got to tell you, that just made me emotional. Everybody knows I'm a softie. Did someone tell you how to really get me to almost cry? It's funny because it's funny, but it's not. But it's like we go through this journey and we're doing things every single day because we feel it's what we've been led to do. And all the while, a lot of times I have felt like no one notices. And when someone like yourself, whom I also respect and admire, comes on and gives me that little bit of an affirmation, that external validation, I tell you, I do crave it and I do appreciate it. So thank you. It makes me feel very happy.
You're so welcome. I think when we're very driven, we forget to allow ourselves grace and to give ourselves accolades, or just to remember, like, I really did do that, and I really am showing up in a powerful way. So,
well, because we don't know, right? Because like everything on the internet is so skewed. We don't know based on analytics, or I cannot believe how hard it is to even reach just the community that I fought so hard to build on Instagram. So if I post something, it just kind of goes hand in hand with my original thought process, right? Is like no one's seeing it, right? If the bulk of the consumers are non-followers, or that are not currently in my community, it's like, then what I build this big following for? Like what's going on? Like how do I engage you? And it's so funny because like I just don't know the answer. I don't know the answer.
I don't think any of us do, right?
No.
Instagram isn't a human. It's not our friend. It's something that we're constantly battling with. But I think all we can do is just be authentic and show up true to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And some days it's going to hit as far as algorithms go, but oftentimes it's hitting, even if the algorithms aren't showing it, it's touching that person. And that's, I think at the heart of it, that's why we put the content out there, right? We do it because we want to make a difference.
It's funny because like someone said to me the other day, is like, hey, I've been watching all your stuff. I see it all. It was one of my former baseball players. He came over for dinner. He's good. He's a good friend now. Jake Gibson. He's like, bro, I've been paying attention. And I asked him, like, you don't like, can you engage? So I know you're there. It's like, but it's funny because that's for me. And so I sat there and I thought, like, immediately after I said that, I said, dude, I'm sorry. No, I shouldn't have said that, because you're consuming the content and you're getting what you need out of it. And, the likes and the comments or the shares, whatever, that's just for the creator, right? That's that external validation to say, like, okay, you're doing a good job, buddy. Keep going. There's your pat on the back. But anyway, we're not going to talk about it.
I always tell people this. I say, okay, if we go to the grocery store, which I am an extroverted introvert, right? Like I love stuff like this, but in real life, like we were talking, I like space, So if I went to the grocery store and 20 people came up to me and was like, "Oh my gosh, hi," said all these things to me, I'd be so overwhelmed. But if I get 20 likes, I'm like, I was really shooting for 60.
I know. No, it's funny because like I'm very extroverted, but what people don't know about me, I'm a closet introvert, and it gets that way sometimes. And if I see 3 people at the grocery store, that's just not the time I want to connect. What I mean? It's like, dude, like I gotta get up out of here. I don't want to go through this conversation. And I always try to end it with like, oh man, like, hey, give me a shout. Call me. Because if I'm running into you in the grocery store, it's probably, you probably have my number. If I'm talking to you in a grocery store, right? And it's so funny, they still don't want to let you go. It's like, dude, like, listen, man, I got to get these eggs, and I make like, hey, I got ice cream at the very bottom of the cart, man. You can't see it, but I got to get this home. My kid's gonna be pissed. It's melted. So he's trying to.
It's hot out.
It's hot, but no, you're right. If you look at a reel and you're like, okay, well, 300 views, this sucks. But if 300 people walked into your house right now to listen to what you're saying, you'd be like, whoa, back up, and that just gets into the whole vanity metrics and comparisons and, all that kind of stuff. But, the road I really want to go down right now, though, is I would like for the audience that hasn't connected with you and hasn't learned about Jody, tell them a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you're going through right now, so they can have some context.
Okay, awesome. So I, for the past 20 years, worked in the corporate world, leadership, sales. It was like that's what I did, right? And the last 5-6 years, I've really focused on more of an entrepreneurial journey, having multiple streams of income, really lifting my lid, meeting different groups of people, mentorships, all of the things. And last summer, almost a year ago, I wasn't feeling right. I'm very healthy. I do a lot of certain things. I hired a distance nutritionist, and she was like, you're kind of like, without in a kind way, she's like, you're kind of crazy compared to most people. Like, you do like 90% of things that most people don't do, right? I'm like, I know. But I was still feeling like bloated and fatigued, and I just couldn't figure it out. And she was able to order blood work, and she ordered TPO antibodies.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, I don't want to scare you, but I have hypothyroid and Hashimoto's, and I'm kind of thinking this, but I don't want to scare you. So it came back that they were really high. So I walked into my PCP and said, I have these high numbers from a nutritionist. I have family history. I haven't been feeling well. And so he immediately ordered an ultrasound. From the ultrasound, he called me. I'll never forget it. You just don't forget this kind of stuff, right? I'm driving in a car. It's like a movie. The sun's shining down in the back of the car. The doctor calls it almost 7:00 at night. I'm like, like, your soul just knew.
You're like, he ain't calling me at 7 p.m. to tell me anything good.
No. And he, was like, it starts off with, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh, Lord, have mercy. And it was like my soul already kind of knew,
yeah.
When I seen those antibodies, like, things just kind of started to make sense. And from there, I had a biopsy done. And in the biopsy, it goes, don't worry. 90% of the time, I tell people, good news. My job isn't that bad. And when he turned around, my husband and then you could see, like, his shoulders kind of go down when he looked under the microscope. And I was like, you don't have to say it. And he said, I do. It's my job. And I said, well, I can tell, by your body language. And he said, I am so sorry. That it's definitely cancer. And from there, I, scheduled the surgery and decided to do a lobectomy. Like, we can see my battle scar here. Decided to do a lobectomy, which is removing half. And we removed the half, and I was like, okay, I made it through it. It's going to be okay. I'm not going to have to take meds. Like, kind of had it, how it is. We make a game plan, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
It's in our control.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Then,
we're in control here.
Yeah, of course. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do.
I can barely control my calendar. Like, it's not, something like this would be way out of my depth. But anyway, go ahead.
And honestly, I do think with as much time as I've had in stillness and surrender, that is what God was doing this whole time, right? Because here I thought I was just going to, like everything else, okay, I'm put it in a box, put the lid on it. This is what I'm going to do. And I went to the appointment with the ENT, like, for a follow-up. And he is a surgeon. He's not an emotional guy, right? And I looked at his white coat, and there was a crucifix on it. And he got knee to knee with me, and he said, I can't do the next surgery. And I was like, what? Why? Like, why would you not do the next surgery? And he said, because your cancer is metastasized to the other side of your thyroid, to the lymph nodes in your neck, and to the top of your collarbone. And I just sat there like, what did you just say? Like, the first time I was told I had cancer, like, your whole world kind of shifts. And then that time I was just shook, right? Like, just dumbfounded. Like, then it was like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, what does this mean? Where else is it? And I kind of asked him those questions, and he said, I'm going to order a CT scan. We're going to see where else everything is. And he's going to send me to the University of Michigan. I live in Ohio. So it's like a really good hospital in in Michigan.
Yeah.
So went up there, and the doctor was really great. He was like one of the head cancer surgeons up there, and he said, it has metastasized. I am going to remove it. But I don't think, because I thought I was going to do a full neck dissection, which to me, the thought of it, and this is, I'm not saying that this is accurate, but do you know what a spatchcock chicken is?
No.
It's where they cut the chicken down the middle and lay it like this. And I felt like that's what they were going to be doing with my neck. You know what I mean?
Oh
To get
gosh.
all of that out.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I don't think that I have to do that. So we just did the full removal. And I then went in for follow-ups, and they said, things look good. There was still some positive lymph nodes. So I did radiation with a nuclear team. It was a week long, different series of tests, different things. And the radiation will be in me for 6 months. And it is shrinking. So that's amazing, right? As hard as this was, yes. As hard as this has been, in ways it truly is miraculous. Like I still am functioning. I have my hair. Like there's so many things that it's changed my life so much, but it's also, I think it was a surrender. Like that's my word for 2024.
That's awesome.
Like, yeah, it's just been wild.
Yeah, you still have your beautiful red hair. Like it's still there. I mean,
I'm so thankful for that. It's falling out kind of, but it's still,
well, if that's falling out, you're doing pretty well.
Thank you.
So the radiation will be within your system for 6 months. Where are we on that timeline right now?
So I had it done in February.
Okay. All right. So till August.
Well, yeah, like
right?
September. Well, it was middle of February, so like October-ish. Yeah.
Okay.
When they'll actually do the retesting. I'll go back, and they won't do the same things, obviously, but they're going to do a series of tests and make sure. And they did blood work in April to make sure, and testing to make sure that it was shrinking, and the numbers are half of what they were before. So
dude, that's awesome. That's fantastic. We're going to celebrate. Look at that. We're going in the right direction, and I have no doubt you'll continue in that direction. Let me ask you this though, because I've had my own scare before, and I'll give you the background. So I was doing life insurance tests at some point, and my liver enzymes were elevated. And so I couldn't get qualified for the amount of insurance that I wanted. And so I just kind of let it be. It's like, no big deal. I'm not sick. I was very overweight at the time. And I figured that might be it. And I was doing some drinking. Okay. So I figured like, well, hell, I don't have very healthy life habits right now. Surely my blood work and everything within my, organs is not going to be happy with me. So I let it chill for a while. And then I got to a point where I was really tired. I couldn't put on muscle mass. I wasn't burning fat. And so I went and got my blood work done. I found out I was extremely low in the testosterone area. And, I played sports, Division I baseball. I never supplemented testosterone back in the day. If you catch what I'm saying, I never did steroids or anything like that. So it was odd to me that my test was so low, but that wasn't my main concern. They came back and they said like, dude, your liver enzymes are like really high. Like you need to go get checked out. I'm like, dude, I'm freaking fine, man. Good. And so I went down this journey. They did an ultrasound. They say found some polyps on my gallbladder. Right. But that's even, they can take that out as long as you catch it. It's quick. It's easy. Right. But then they saw like, okay, your liver's inflamed a little bit, and, it's a little angry. So then they did more appointments. Like they did what was it? We did an MRI with contrast, a CAT scan with contrast, or some crazy stuff like that. And it really got down to a point where they could not figure out what was wrong. But can't. They didn't know. And so they said, well, we want to do a transjugular liver biopsy. I'm like, what in the are you talking about? And they started saying, well, we gotta make sure your pancreas is good. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? Like that for me right there is a hard stop. Like my grandmother passed away of pancreatic cancer in 1997. My first girlfriend passed away, 15 something years ago from pancreatic cancer. And she was actually my girlfriend when my grandma died of pancreatic cancer. Crazy, major trigger for me. At that point, I was crying in the corner all night, and I couldn't even put my youngest daughter down to bed without losing my mind. Right. And so fast forward, did the liver biopsy. There's like, hey, we'll have the results, in a couple days. A couple days goes by, nothing. I'm like, oh shit, I have liver cancer. I'm done. Like I am done. And I finally got a hold of the records department, like, oh, well, we sent the specimen to Johns Hopkins. I'm like, what in the world? Like, y'all. And they're like, no. I should have said it's normal. We send all of our biopsies there. I'm like, okay. So came back, minor scarring. Like they called it what? Minor fibrosis, right? It looks like I just went to college. I do not have fatty liver. There is no cancer. My liver enzymes are still high and no one can tell me why.
To this day.
To this day, they're still high. They're high. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. But dude, yeah. So long story long, I had to go through this liver biopsy and it was just the most terrifying moment. And so my next question is, it wasn't a reality for me. For you, it was a reality. You have a husband, you have children. How many children do you have?
One son.
One son, about to be a senior in high school. Mm-hmm. Dude, walk me through that. Because I think that's everybody listening right now. That's what they want to hear, right? Because we all take our loved ones for granted at some level every single day.
Right.
We do. It's human nature. It's hard. But to get that news, walk us through that.
I think that was the hardest part, right? Like when I was told initially that I had cancer, my husband was sitting in the room and he's not a real emotional guy, right? And I couldn't even look at him because I thought, okay, I kind of knew this is true. And I knew if I looked over at him, I would lose it, right? Mm-hmm. And I did not want to lose it in front of this gentleman that did the biopsy. So we get in the car, and he's just like, I can't believe it. And he, obviously has been there for me. I think for me, the hardest part when I found out that it had metastasized, and like you said, it's human nature for us. When something's wrong with us, we're like, oh, worst case scenario. I'm not going to see my kids grow up. This is going to happen. Like, what is my wife going to do? What husband? Like, we spin, right? Yeah. And that's why mindset is so important. But one day a couple days after I found out that it had metastasized, my son came home and he was like, we have a long couch and he was leaned up against it and he was like fumbling around with his foot. And he's like, I want to ask you something. And I was like, you can ask me anything. You're my only kid. And he's like, I don't know if I can ask you. And I said, what do you want to ask me? Just ask me. And he like bit his lower lip a little bit. And he's like, And I was like, it's so hard to say to this day. I'm like, you want to know if I'm going to die? And he was like, yeah, I do. And I was like, no. And he's like, are you sure? And I was like, I'm sure. He's like, you're my mom. Like, you're my best friend. And I was like, I'm sure. So I think when you go through something like that, that's the hardest thing I've ever been through. That makes everything else seem so small. When you have to look at, how much you love your children, the only one you got, and you're like, no. And in your head, you're like, shit, I hope not. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
that forces you to lean on God. There's so many times through this, like there's things you need, you know what I mean? Then you're just like, I don't feel what I need from someone else. And it's forced me to lean on God. I've had to beg God, like, please love me the way no one else can. Please show me that unconditional love that I need right now. Because, there's times where my husband's not capable. My son's not capable. Mm-hmm. I'm just a human. I don't even know sometimes what I need. You know what I mean? I think when you go through a surrender like that, it forces you to think differently. It forces you to think, this life is just this life, right? And then what we're constantly doing every day, what we should be doing, is working towards being the best version of ourselves for where we're going to be someday, right? What we're leaving behind, so that people realize, like, wow, she made that a little bit better, right? Like, or if she can show up this way through this, I can too, right?
Yeah. Dude,
it just changes you. I mean, there's no way around that.
You got me there, my friend.
I promise. Like I got a tissue, but I'm like, I'm going to keep it together.
No, listen. I mean, listen, if not anything on the show, we can be 100% authentic with our emotions. I'm like listening to this and I don't know why. Anytime that I start worrying about myself, I always think, what's my son going to do? Then I have two beautiful daughters, a 7 and a 5. But for some reason, I'm like, what's that little man going to do if I'm not here? And I think it all boils down to my son has a very special name. My mom, when she was 6 years old, was um, driving up in Northern California. She wasn't driving, but my grandfather was. And my grandma was in the car, and then her brother David. And they were hit head on by a drunk driver. Killed my grandfather and killed my uncle before I even knew him, obviously. My grandmother and my mom survived. And my grandfather's name was Bobby Lee Doster. And, you know, I looked just like him. I ended up playing the same position as him. I was a catcher. He was a catcher. His actual friends that played with him came and watched me play a fall ball game when I was in junior college and said, "You are your grandfather. You look like him. You play just like him. Like you are a mean son of a bitch." I was like, "Thanks." And it meant a lot to me. Anyway, my son's named after him. And so there's just like this weird emotional, you know, overlaying loss, you know, to the family with that name. And for me, it was bringing that name back. And so it's weird. Like you mentioned your son, you know, and it's just for me that really connects with me because of course I worry about all my children, but for some reason, like it goes straight to him. I don't know if it's because he was my first or if it's because of the name or what it is, man, but it is heavy, you know. And the one person that I think the one child that I think would be completely toast if I were to leave this earth would be my youngest. She would, I don't know what she'd do. I don't know what she would do. My wife had a really hard time when she lost her dad to lung cancer and she was 14. And I feel that relationship with her father has transmutated to, I don't even know if that's the right word, but sounded
I make up
freaking
words all
cool.
the time.
Sound cool, right? Well, IQ is low, people. I don't know what you want from me. I have a good voice. That's it. But like my daughter and I have that close relationship, like that inseparable close relationship that my wife and her father had. So, you know, I don't know, I'm rambling now, but those are the things, like I'm going through these emotions, you know, as your, you know, son's asking you like, "Mom, are you going to live? Are you going to die?" Like that shit's heavy, man.
It's heavy. You know, it's fun. That's not funny, but I used to always pray. I'm divorced. I'm married now, but I've been with my husband for 10 years, but it's not Dom's father. And I used to always pray once we got, Lord, let me live until that boy's grown, you know? And then
No.
when this happened, I'm like, this is not what I meant.
No. I meant like 75.
My grandkids, all the things. And you
Yeah.
know, he has aspirations. He's a very good football player. He wants to play D1 or D2 college ball. And you know, this is a pinnacle for him. We're actually going to a camp on Saturday, and I just want to show him also, like, you know, you can do anything regardless of what happens to you, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it gave me the strength. Like, I've been miserable in corporate and sales and leadership for years, but it's
Terrible. I
what I
was
did.
the same. It's terrible.
Terrible, like being told what
Terrible.
to do, how to go, no matter what I do. Like I'm look,
Worst shit ever. We can get to that. I want to get that is the worst stuff ever.
yeah.
Like, it's
And
god
like,
awful. Yeah.
as much as this has been hard, it's a different kind of hard
Mm-hmm.
because it gave me the courage to be like, I was sitting in a board meeting and it sounded like the Muppets, like won't,
Mm-hmm.
won't, won't. They fight.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this is so ridiculous. My boss was the only one that knew at the time. I looked at him. I'm like, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
It was insane. And I was like, I'll bring my stuff Monday. I walked out of that building, and when I seen the light, I was like, I felt so free. I had no idea what I was going to do, but it gave me the courage to be like, I'm not going back.
Yeah. Life's short. That corporate racket, man. I tell you what, I lived it for a lot of years. I walked away in January. Walked away for my own payroll company. Well, I have a partner, and then of course my show, and we have a whole massive relaunch coming. Partners are in now, and it's going to look different. But you know, that was scary. I bet on myself though, and for me, I can't stand when my phone rings when someone's calling me just to check in or just say, hey, just checking in, say what's going on, like how are you? And then it goes into a whole 35-minute conversation of my business and where it's at and what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and who I'm seeing today. I just feel like there's a time and place for that. And I feel that's like when you're at the quadrant of level 1 sales skills. But once you reach a point where you understand the product, whether it's a medical product, you got to know the clinical efficacy, or if it's just selling payroll, you got to know your product. And once you know it, you should be trusted with a little bit of freedom. But I also understand when people aren't out there doing their job, right? You have to keep your tabs on those people. But then the problem lies when,
Can't hear you.
those people aren't doing their jobs. And, now the top producers are being hounded more because they know, okay, I do. Yes. And we'll go out like, I need 4 more deals to make up for this. Like, dude, I'll get that for you tomorrow. No big deal. Boom. Right. But that's the problem, right? Like the corporate environment, I think is great to get started. I think it is awesome to have benefits that, you can trust. I mean, cause as a self-employed individual, the benefits suck. Like it's hard because you're not a part of a big group. Right. But,
Do you want to know the last thing that I did? I was a health insurance broker.
Oh God.
After being on this side of it and knowing what I know versus what families don't know, I mean, that breaks my heart open. I can't, there's no way. Like, it was one thing to sit on it thinking I was making a difference. And now being on this side, I'm like, no, there's just no way. Corporate is everything you said.
It's insane. It just like, I pride myself, like, with my employees and the people that I deal with, to not be like that. But at the same time, we need to run business, right? And we need people that are going to go out there and get stuff done. That's just the way it is. And what you find is you can't always depend on other people, right? You got to do it all yourself. So, but all right. So listen. So you're going through it. Everything's shrunk by 50% from what I gather. How are you feeling every day, and what's kind of what are you doing in your life for others right now? Because I know you're focused on other people, and you do a lot of amazing things. So why don't you share with the audience what you do?
So you asked me 2 parts there of the question. The first part,
That's the ADHD. I'm sorry. Just it happened. You're going to get a taste of it every now and again. Deal with it.
Totally have ADHD. You said, what the heck did you say though?
I don't know. I forget. So I think I said something around the tunes of, everything's shrunk by 50%. So what are your days looking like now? What are you doing? You're an entrepreneur. So how are you helping others?
Yeah.
Southwest Florida is one of the most beautiful places on the planet to live. For those of you that are thinking of moving from other states to come to Florida, or even just moving to a different part of the state, I want you to think of a big, beautiful luxury home. Contact Legacy Luxury Builders. They are a family-owned and operated luxury residential construction company. As a family-owned business, they believe in the power of building not just homes, but legacies. Contact Legacy Luxury Builders.
So honestly, I feel a lot better because I think to have had things metastasize as much as they did, I was living with this for 8 to 10 years. Like 2014, I lost my hearing and developed a fish allergy. I think it was all related to this and I didn't know. 2018, I had my gallbladder out. You talked about a gallbladder because they told me that's what it was. So I did it. It was really this. I didn't know. 2021, I had a miscarriage. It was because of this. I didn't know. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that my body was saying, please help, please help. But my numbers were within normal limits and my panel said nothing was wrong. Even when I went in, if I wouldn't went in with that test that I did, my TSH, which is like your thyroid marker, was within normal limits and it was riddled with cancer.
Wow.
So that's part of why I show up every day and try to help educate people, because if I would have just went in and said, I think something's wrong with my thyroid, they would have been like, no, you're fine. Go home.
So what do you tell people? I mean, like, let's think about that because we are trusted. Like I'm sitting here, I just got my blood work done. My PSA for prostate came out normal. All my levels are normal, but how the hell do I know? So how do you help? How do you instruct people to find out what's really going on, because that sounds scary as hell.
Right. So when you have, so what, I mean, obviously I have surgeons, I have neurology, or, nuclear teams, endocrinologists, all these doctors, but I sought out a functional doctor, and I kind of like, I say it's like dating, right? Like I interviewed probably close to 10 overall across the United States. And through those interviews, I decided I wanted a woman. I wanted someone I could look in the eyes. So I wanted her to be local, and I wanted her to have had Hashimoto's and know what it feels like to be me. And, had maybe not thyroid cancer, but thyroidectomy, something very similar to me. And I found one, and she's been so helpful. They think differently. She's willing to let me play an active role in my treatment. I educate myself on, okay, if you want to put me on this or you think this, let me do some research and let me figure it out. I think so many of us are guilty of just being sheep. You go in and they say, well, this is this. And you're like, okay, bye, let me go home. Like, no,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
our lives. You have to research, like, okay, if your liver enzymes are high, you have to research what would cause them to be high. How do I find a doctor who understands this and who can figure out what it means? Because I will tell you, our bodies don't just do something like that for no reason. Something's
Yeah.
off.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
And that's the thing, dude. I went to internal meds. I went through everything. It's like, damn. Now, here, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did find this one thing. So my EBV levels were high. So at one point I had mono, right? That's what that means, Epstein-Barr virus.
I have
Now,
Epstein-Barr.
I know there's the different stages of Epstein-Barr, right? And one of the stages is like 4th stage, and it's not like cancer, people. So don't,
Right.
when I
No,
say
it's an autoimmune
stages,
disease.
yeah, it's and I tested negative for autoimmune. Okay. However, stage 4 of Epstein-Barr settles into your liver.
And let me just tell you this. Okay, I'm not a doctor, not claiming to be, but Epstein-Barr is an autoimmune.
I wish you were a doctor. Figure this thing out, because
if you have one autoimmune, you have more. Okay, so you probably have other autoimmune issues because Epstein-Barr is autoimmune related. And low dose naltrexone (LDN) helps so much with that. Helps with inflammation, helps with Epstein-Barr, because Epstein-Barr, what can happen when you're saying your levels are high and then they're low, Epstein-Barr can flare up, and Epstein-Barr can come back down.
So when the flares up, do you get really tired and just not want to do shit? Yeah. So it all goes back to this one moment for me. And I don't know that it was this, because I drank a lot that weekend. I might have been dehydrated. My best friend in the world got married. I think maybe in 2008 or 9, at Megan's Bay in St. Thomas. Justin Higgins. I grew up with the guy. Married beautiful woman, Brooke Higgins, who's now one of my closest friends. Known the kid since I was 11 years old. And I got back from that trip and I couldn't leave the couch for like 2 weeks. I don't know what happened. I was just, my body hurt. I was dizzy. Like I got the 2 days after I got back, the night I got back, I went out with my friends. Everything was fine. Slept, went to a baseball camp. And when I woke up, I felt like when I woke up, I walked and I hit the wall. I'm like, what the hell is this? Right. That's strange. And then I got to the baseball field and I was spinning. And I looked at the guy that I coach with. I'm like, Josh, bro, I got to go home. I can't see. I was driving on the interstate and I felt like my body was going like this. And then I was just out for 2 weeks. I got really bloated, really big. And I don't know, like that's when it started for me. Like there's multiple times throughout the year that I'll get really like, I can't today. I gotta sit on my ass and watch TV or lay down all day. And it's not being me being lazy. It's like, I literally can't move.
That's definitely something, right? Yeah. Something is happening to your body where it's like, hey, help us. And that's something I've learned is like our bodies will tell us that. One of the doctor, like the internal medicine doctor or someone you're seeing, I would talk about low dose naltrexone because I think that I take that every night and it's helped me a lot with inflammation and and I totally changed my diet, right? Like I don't eat any gluten. I have very limited dairy. I know what my triggers are now. And before all this time, the last 10 years, I was just living my life thinking I could do whatever I wanted. Had no clue I had any of this wrong. Nutrition plays a big role. I was doing the complete wrong exercises. I'm type A doer driver. So of course I love HIIT workouts and heavy, like more intense, better, let's compete, and my doctor was like, quit. You can't do that anymore. You need to walk and do strength training. I feel so much better.
Oh, I bet.
I've lost like 20 pounds through all of this because I'm like actually paying attention to what my body needs. You know what I mean?
That's cool.
So I try to show up. I try to tell people that. I try to help people with, different things that are going to be relatable, that are going to help them, that are going to educate them, just like this, that are going to help them live a better life. I am a huge believer in Kangen water machine. Like, I think anything you can do to change your lifestyle and stop so many toxic products from being in your home and being on your body, it all matters. I mean, what you
I
put on your
agree.
body, what you put in your body. I'm just kind of like walking through that organically,
Yeah.
because I basically was forced to.
Yeah.
I think if you go through, like, the people who go through something like this and just think, I'll be fine. I'm gonna go right back to that lifestyle. We'll go somewhere and people are like, do you want to drink? And I'm like, no. And it's not because I won't drink, but it's
Yeah.
because I already have poison in my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
How am I going to put more poison in my body?
It's funny because like I don't see anything wrong, for day-to-day people, like if they're not going through what you're going through, to have some drinks. Like
Right. I don't either.
I think the other night we had like a little bit of a party and I had one beer and I'm like, yeah, I'm done. Like I just don't crave that like I used to. I don't like how it makes me feel, and a lot of it is because if my liver enzymes are high, it means it's not functioning like it should. So I'm not metabolizing alcohol like I used to, right? So it makes me feel really bad the next day. If I have more than 3 alcoholic beverages, doesn't matter. It could be spread out. The next day, I do not feel well. Like it just, so for me, that plays a big role. It's like, to your point, like, okay, if it makes me feel like this, why am I going to do it? I'm just
Exactly.
not going to do it. Right now, if I can only get to that part with pizza, like then I would be probably shredded. Okay. Cause I love pizza, but to your point, like I've learned if I have pizza, I have 2 pieces and that's it. Because if I have more the next day, I can't function. I just don't feel good. There's too much. There's the gluten, there's the dairy, right? There's just a ton of stuff in there. Probably that's, not very good for my body and my system. So, I think it's important, like you said, just to walk through things that you're putting on your body, putting in your body, and being more aware. I think a lot of times, like I was thinking, like, okay, what would be the pushback on this, right? And the pushback is like, dude, something's gonna kill me, right? Like the sun's dangerous, for crying out loud. Something's gonna take me out. I'm not gonna spend my life auditing every single thing that I put on or inside my body. And what people don't realize is you may have to do that for a week or two. That's it, until you have a baseline and you get the readings back. You understand what's going on. So it's something that I've been really toying around with as well. So it's interesting that you brought that up. A lot of the reason I haven't circled back with the liver is just because it's traumatizing. It's just,
Well,
it's very traumatizing.
speaking of trauma, that's another thing, right? Like, I do help, like, for years, I've been a mentor as far as like trauma healing,
Mm-hmm.
because this all stems from, and it's crazy when you can link the pieces. I grew up in fight or flight. I
Mm-hmm.
have adrenal fatigue. I take DHEA for that now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I grew up in this fight or flight situation where I was doomed from the beginning and just had no idea, because you don't know. You know what I mean? So trauma is huge. When we don't deal with trauma, it comes out in other ways.
Mm.
I do think, yes, there's family history, but growing up that way, and here's something else I'll tell you. This is the first time in my whole life, I was running from, I never want to be like my mother. I never want to be like everything I did. Corporate ladder, this,
Mm-hmm.
that, success, wealth, never want to be like my mother. This was the first time that I put in the work these past few years and really let all of that go.
Mm.
And now I'm not running from anything. I'm running to who I'm supposed to be,
Yeah,
unapologetically.
I love
And
that.
that's attractive.
That's very attractive. It's funny because a mentor of mine, he was my leader at Paychecks, Kurt Cushing. Um, he always said, I just want to make sure you're running towards something and not from something.
So true.
I mean,
So
and
powerful.
I'm like, and when he first said it to me, and our relationship has gotten much better, right? Like you know, we went through a tough spot. I resigned from the company one time and I blasted him. And, we circled back around, I ate crow and we built this amazing relationship. Love the guy more than anything. And, you know, I just feel that when he said that to me the first time, it offended me. And not because he said anything wrong. It was all because of my weak mindset and my scarcity mindset. And really what it probably boiled down to is pride. You don't tell me, like, you know, I'm going to go figure this thing out. You know, was I right? Yes, I was right. I was running towards something, right? Also away from something as well, because I didn't like the way things were going with that company. But that statement, that quote, I just feel like if you all can just stop right now that are listening, write that down, please. You know, always make sure you're running towards something, not away from something. And what Jody's saying is she's running towards the person she is going to be, who is she supposed to be, unapologetically. And I think that that's what I've learned lately is unapologetically. I don't worry about how people are going to take me anymore, because I know I don't have any bad intentions. I know I'm not
That's it,
acting.
right?
Yeah, I'm not acting disrespectfully. You may not like me, and you may not like what I put out, but it's funny how I never catch hate. Never. Like other creators doing what I'm doing, they're putting things out that are less controversial than the things that I say, and I never get hate for it. And y'all listen, like I'm not asking you to come hate on me, right? But I think it's because people can actually see my heart.
Yeah. I feel that. I felt that through you over time. Absolutely. And I think that's it too. So it's when your heart is pure. It's when God knows your heart. It's when your intentions are good. It's when your intentions are right. Like 5 years ago, I'm pointing over here because that's where I sit for my AM intentional time. People say, how can I pray for you? And then maybe you pray in that moment and you forget. I have a prayer book. It's so long. It takes, I feel like my grandma, you know, like she used to get up in the morning and she'd go through all these prayers, but I feel like it's so important. Like if you're going to say you're those things, you need to really be those things. And when you start integrating yourself with that and the word, and things just start to look really different. And if I didn't have that, I could never have the grace and elegance that I've had through this situation,
Yeah.
because it's flipped my life upside down. Right. And I'm just trying to use it for the good. I know that God has a plan. I know, and I'm just trying to be a good disciple in the sense of like, okay, this is how it's made me stronger. This is where you want me to go. And just praying into that every day and your belief, right? I was just this morning when I was getting ready, I even said this in my stories today. It's your belief. The times in my life, like, I don't know if you can see like those shiny things back there that
Yeah.
I've been in the corporate world and got all these, you know, awards and different things. I had this relentless belief that it was already done. I started at the bottom, like, I want to get it to the top. I'm going to show you. I'm going to do it in 6 months. And that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think we lose that sometimes, or we have this comparison thing. One of my bosses one time, I'll never forget this. Sometimes he was great and sometimes he was an ass, but he said this and it was so true. He said, don't compare, relate. Don't compare yourself to where anybody else is at. Relate to the fact of how did they get there? How did they do it?
Yep.
What did it had to take?
So it's so amazing because you talk about the shiny things. I have mine in a box somewhere. But it's like, and just because I can't put it behind anywhere, so there's nowhere to put it. So,
I love your wall though. It's cute.
thank you.
Welcome.
But the awards, like every month, they come out with, you know, sales conference. You got to hit this revenue, this many units, and you're going here. Here are the bonuses. I'm like, fuck, bet. Done.
It's a game. It's a game
It's
to
like,
us.
okay, how fast can I get there? Like, okay, cool. Awesome. You want to play? Let's play. And I would thrive on new people coming in. And they would always go, I would be introduced to them like at kickoffs, like annual kickoffs or whatever. And like, oh, like I've heard a lot about you. Like, hey, I'm going to beat you this year. I just look at them. I go, hope you're ready for a ride, bud. Cause you have no idea what you just did. And they're like, what's that? I go, you just put a target on your back. And I will make sure every single day that you feel me and see me coming. And they look at me like, no, I'm just saying. I'm like, no, I'm just saying. Here's your first lesson. And within like 3 months, they'd call me like, hey, I shouldn't have said that to you. Can you help me? I'm like, absolutely. What do you need? Like, I would be the first person to mentor and to take them under my wing and to help them. But like, it was a game to me. It, like, to your point, And it's so funny. And I think you will be able to relate to this. When you go into entrepreneurship, you still know those principles and they will work in entrepreneurship too, but we don't apply them right away. We don't apply them right away because of the trauma of the constant grind on the corporate end and all the things that we did, updating Salesforce, update Salesforce. You get to this and you go, yeah, I'm going to do it differently. And what you realize is, no, those amazing things that you were taught in corporate, still do them, but do them under your own rules, and you'll see that you'll get much more traction sooner. But I just think it's funny because I didn't operate like that for a long time. Then I started to, I'm like, oh, there it is.
Well, I think it's like breaking up, right? Like
Yeah.
when you break up, you're like, oh, I don't like girls. Oh, I don't like boys, right?
Mhm.
Like, oh, I'm so over that. That's how it was with corporate in the beginning. Like, oh no, like. But then it's like, okay, some of that stuff does really work.
Yeah. I mean, for a while though, you're right. It's just like, you just do not want to do anything that was associated with corporate America, even with some of the people that are maybe in your new organization that you are trying to coach through. You're like, I don't want to be like that. I'm going to give them more leeway. Then you realize, dude, you gave them an inch. They took 17 yards. Like, now you got to fire them. Right. Because it was my fault. Right. Because I didn't set the expectation because, I thought that we could do this differently, but then I have to realize not everybody's ready to think like that. Some people need that structure. Like when you first started corporate sales, you needed that structure. You needed that. You needed to be told. I needed to be told. When we get better, it's like, we don't need it. But then when we transition into a different venture, we automatically think that everybody else is just like us.
Isn't
And
that funny?
weird too. It's like, no one, I mean, like, if you're going to hire somebody, they're not going to have the drive and the skills that you do. They would be doing the hiring if they did. Right. And so it's like, I'm not saying that they don't have the potential to be that, but it's like, dude, like, we have to realize that everybody's coming to us at a different point in their journey, and we got to be there for wherever they're at in their journey. And it might mean that we have to, keep them underneath the thumb a little bit more than we'd like to for their own good. Then we can let off.
Well,
But you
I
can't
think
do it in
it
reverse.
too. Right. And learning to accept people, learning we need people that aren't like us around us, because if we were all like us, oh, mamma mia, right?
Me and my wife are relatively the same. It's like, I don't know how this house survives because we're both like super intense.
Yeah,
But it works.
my husband and I are that way, and it's difficult sometimes, right? Like
Uh-huh.
we've always typically yin and yang pretty well, but sometimes it's like we're both doing the same thing. Like, oh, that's not.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good.
The standoff, right? The standoffs. Gotta love those. Gotta love those. But listen, I really enjoyed having you on the show, chatting with you. One thing that I learned, it's interesting. I thought you lived in Florida.
Oh, that would be great.
I thought you lived in Florida.
Florida, because I'm always at the ocean. I am going to have a second house either in Florida or California. I fight with my husband for California, but he's like, no, there's too ridiculous on the cost and the different things there.
Yeah.
So it probably will end up being in Florida, but I love the ocean. It's my favorite place to be. So maybe that's why you thought I lived by it.
I just don't know. I thought you lived on the east coast of Florida. I thought you were like in West Palm. I thought you were like 2 hours from me. I was going to suggest lunch, but it'll be a little bit more of a commute than I thought.
I'll be there. I'll be near there soon enough.
Well, when you need to let me know. When you come to Florida, you need to let me know. But interesting. So I learned something new. But thank you so much for sharing your journey and just your heart and who you are with the audience. Before I let you go, tell them where they can find you and how they can best support you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, Jody Yonker, and Facebook and TikTok, and soon to be YouTube. That is the next thing that I'm going to conquer.
YouTube. That's fun.
Yeah. And thank you for having me. You are just a light. And don't forget that. The way you show up and pour into the world, it's noticed.
Thank you. I absolutely love you. And guys, girls, listen, if this is the first time you listen to the show, please subscribe, leave a written review, and share this episode with somebody that you love, know, and trust, or someone that you feel could just get something really good out of the things that Jody shared and I shared. And, until next time, guys, just, stick to your process, whatever it is that you create out there, and go at it with sheer and sadistic determination, and don't worry about the results. And let's see where you end up. Until next time, guys, peace out. Southwest Florida is one of the most beautiful places on the planet to live. For those of you that are thinking of moving from other states to come to Florida, or even just moving to a different part of the state, I want you to think of a big, beautiful luxury home. Contact Legacy Luxury Builders. They are a family-owned and operated luxury residential construction company. As a family-owned business, they believe in the power of building not just homes, but legacies. Contact Legacy Luxury Builders.